Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Jack. I'm a third-year student studying Bachelor of Art History and Curating. And today we're very lucky to have four artists to join us for this panel discussion about photography and belonging, how this concept of belonging has been utilized in photography. And as always, before we begin our panel discussion, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on this land which the people of Kulu Nations, and I would like to acknowledge the Bunurong people, and I repay my respect to their elders past and present. And I really appreciate this opportunity to hold this panel on this land, and I understand their sovereignty has never been ceded. And I think I will start by letting you introduce yourself to the audience, so that it's much easier for them to understand your practice. And so we have Shakay Gosling and Chantal Stewart, Leon Rice-Wellen, and Serena Ho, and all of them are from Fine Arts, Monash Fine Art, and third-year students as well. Do you want to start first?
Okay. Hi, I'm Shaked. Is this good? Yeah. I study fine art here at Monash. I'm an artist located here as well. And I think my work has been heavily influenced by my cultural background, I guess more recently, and it's helped me find out, I guess, a lot more about myself and what I want to do with my art, when there are so many things that you want to do and so many directions that you want to take with creative practices.
Chantal? Yeah,
It's working. My name's Chantal. I use they, them pronouns. My photography, I'm based in Melbourne. My photography focuses around like feminist issues and sexism, to help connect with women and non-binary people, and everything like that.
Hello, I'm Leon. Is that working? Yeah, I'm also based in Melbourne. I use they, them pronouns. I've got a sort of film and photography practice that is concerned a lot with space and the urban environment and also natural environment and all the things that go on there. Yeah.
I'm Serena, also based in Nam, and my practice is kind of centered around like moments of coincidence and memory, and recently gone into a more like photography, digital sort of realm, but also like very object focused with like painting and mark making. Yeah, and very much about like place and responding to spaces as well.
Thank you all, and I think we can jump right into our topics today. And belonging, it's such a broad concept, and artists have been using this idea into their practice for a long time, and it's quite a common thing to see, and it covers a wide variety of ideas, other ideas under this huge tree, and like memories, identities, and other cultural aspects as well. And I want to ask Leon first. You have relatively longer experience with photographic practice. I want to bring you in here first, and there are so many photography exhibitions that explore the concept of belonging, and especially the ones like focusing on human. This this concept of human in the picture, and like photo 2022 with its title is human, and even though I only got visit partially of that huge exhibition across Melbourne, Victoria, and I did see a lot of the works explore the idea around cultural identity and memories, how they attach to their surroundings, their living spaces, and I want to ask, what's your perspective on photography serve as a cultural bridge and capturing or conveying this sense of belonging for individuals and communities across this diverse cultural background?
Oh, it's a big question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really quite know where to begin with it. I guess, as you said, I've got a fairly long history with photography. Like, it was, in terms of thinking of myself as a visual artist, it was the first thing I got into as a sort of young teenager. Connected with my parent was also really into it as well, and it was very much around sort of landscape photography. And I went through a phase of sort of like street photography and that, and then it's a bit more, not so much taking photos of strangers, but still very street or urban photography. And I guess it's interesting, as you said, the human. It's like I'm not one to have a lot of figures or people in my photography. I'm not so much into portraiture. That's just the way I found. But I think it's because I view my own figure, my own presence in the images I capture, and it's very core to sort of how you're presenting your perspective or identity with this place or in this space by how you observe the world, and that's sort of what you're trying to kind of represent. Yeah, and to sort of show, to just kind of explore how you feel that you belong or how you feel a part of a space. I mean, yeah, I mean, in terms of a cultural bridge, I guess, I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like as a white Australian, I own as a settler on this land as well. It's kind of trying to understand my role within this, on this sort of country, and sort of, unceded Aboriginal country, as someone who is part of sort of settler colonialism, and trying to understand how you can reflect that and think about that and explore that through your images, and also reflect and explore a sort of world and how it is representing that. But yeah, that's about all I've got for that.
And as we discuss, identity is also a part of belonging, and I want to ask Chantal about your practice, and I believe delivering the sense of belonging to the viewers plays quite well from your works. And I saw on your social media about the recent show you have. Would you like to tell us about the works in there? Just simply tell us, and how you portray the personal identity in there.
So the most recent show I have, it's coming up in November. It's with Platform Exhibitions. It's called Out of This World. So the concept is around, so it's a bunch of artists showing a lot of surrealist artworks. The pieces I've chosen are called Beautiful is Boring, and that's 3 photos that feature like bold blocks of colour, and I've painted myself entirely blue and posing in like a Vogue-esque model sort of way. I wanted to create like, because I know a lot of women and like femme presenting people experience pressure to look beautiful and to look perfect. And I wanted to create a space where like I've painted myself like a very unnatural colour, and I'm sort of mocking Vogue. So I've had a few different people come up and be like, I relate to that photo because I don't look perfect and I don't look like these people on Vogue. I look different. And I find that there's like a belonging in the photos and my own personal belonging, because obviously being a femme presenting person, I experience like being held up to an unreasonable standard. So I've had a lot of different femme presenting people show and explain to me how they've found like a relation with my work, because they too aren't like model, because it's unrealistic. Yeah.
Feminism covers also quite a large range of ideas and practice, and it's quite a huge topic to research. And you specifically focus on the ways women are treated and sexism, and what ideas that brings you focus on capturing this concept into the image?
Well, I've drawn a lot of personal experience. Obviously, growing up being perceived as a woman, I've experienced a lot of different things from the world and specifically men. So I find that using these sort of like photography helps allow for other femme presenting people to feel like they also have a space and are feeling seen. I've done works in the past where I've talked about my own personal feelings in relation to a certain trauma, and I've had women and femme presenting people come up and go, that is exactly how I felt, I just didn't know how to explain it. So it helps create like a safe space for people to feel like they're being seen and heard.
Okay. Sorry, I think I dropped one question, and I want to bring Shakay in for discussing the cultural aspects as well. I believe your cultural background, as you say, certainly has a critical impact on your practice. And do you want to tell us more about your practice, and is there any specific patterns or like impressions that you put more attention to throughout your practice?
I think I've recently been focusing on using appropriation, not necessarily patterns. The visual elements of it will change, but I have been using, I guess, portraiture and self-portraiture, which is a big battle to combat when you're the photographer and the model. But I've had help with assistance and still figuring out the best ways to approach these things. So that's the closest thing, I guess, to pattern that I could say. But I guess like this repetition of, my same face as the artist in the work, which I do, I think, probably because I used to love painting portraiture, but I never felt that it really truly expressed how I felt or how I wanted to express my creativity in my work. But yeah, I think I do try to, focus on a specific color palette depending on what project I'm doing. Like my first large portrait that I've done recently was like quite large scale, and I quite like that. And I've continually been working on works to make it quite large scale because they respond to, I guess, the suppressed voice and like silencing that people have experienced for a long time. So to be able to put that on a really large scale is quite empowering, and it is a consistent, I guess, element so far in my practice.
I want to ask about the appropriation part. You've shown me before that that's you're always been not always constantly focusing on appropriating the other works, and your most recent one that's appropriating the Last Supper, and like this transformation of materials and details, but with the newer technology and methods. I want to ask, what do you feel about this journey of like recontextualizing your own cultural history and like seeking your place in this world?
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So I don't think I've outlined, but I'm Jewish. So the Last Supper is obviously a Christian vertical painting that's been repeated many times. So my response to that painting, which is one that's being presented mainly obviously in Italy and in churches and I guess all over the world, is this iconic artwork that sort of tells a story of a history that hasn't necessarily treated my people so well from specifically that point in time. So I guess it's sort of like a reappropriation as a reclamation, and that process has been really, I guess, it helps me feel more comfortable and I guess feel like more confident in, I guess, who I am and my own identity but the actual physical process of doing it has been really interesting because it's sort of like, it's humorous, but it's also quite serious. So people are able to engage in it quite easily because of the humor and the easily recognizable, I guess, composition. But then to place the person like that I am physically in each of those people, that does change the narrative completely. And I guess it sort of questions the context as well. It's been an enjoyable process. I do have to learn a lot more about like different religions as well from it, which I do enjoy because I like learning about history. So it's been enjoyable, but definitely not what I expected that I'd be doing at least a year ago.
Thank you. The next session I want to ask Rin. Before we go on to discuss belonging and photography, you mentioned you got even before this panel, you mentioned you have just got into the world of photography not long ago, and would you tell us what kind of magic brings you into this art field?
I guess kind of like accessibility a little bit, like traveling last year. It was kind of when I started making more like photographic collections and stuff, just some things that I was seeing. Yeah, like I mean most people have like a phone that enables you to do that, and that is kind of just where it began. And then I guess also this is a bit like cliche, but Instagram, honestly, because like it kind of does function as like your own space to kind of curate and like show photos and stuff, or just in for your own pleasure, I suppose. And so yeah, when I was like traveling for like 6 months, that was kind of it, just because I was alone quite a lot, and it's kind of like a fun thing to do. And like one thing, like I was collecting like Christmas trees that had died, like images of Christmas trees that were left on the street after Christmas, and it carried on for like 2 months, and it was just like something humorous for me to do when I was alone, I guess. So yeah, I kind of started there, but also there was one photographer whose work I saw that like I found very moving, and I hadn't really had a reaction to photography like that before, which yeah, I suppose like opened me up to seeing like the possibilities, I guess, of photography. And I guess in comparison to what I was doing, it's in my mind like at the very simple parts of it, like it plays into a lot of like art principles and stuff, and there are quite like rigid ways in which a photograph can be like satisfying for someone to look at, and then like playing with those sort of things, and yeah, it's just kind of what made me interested.
Thank you. And I want to discuss about your works that capturing the ordinary scene and around your life, and especially the ones seems like you add a little extra element into a frame on your Instagram that is quite a lot of like wet paints works. Would you tell us why you add these oddities into these mundane images?
Actually, I'm not adding them, they're just there. So it must be for like the council or something, they have like a set template for these like wet paint signs, like they're all the same font and stuff. And then so when people are like painting in public, like on the street, they just like print them out obviously and tape them on there. So I guess what it's more so about is just like finding these like funny patterns, or like coming across these like funny kind of things. And yeah, that is kind of like scattered throughout the city, and I guess that's a bit of like that chance and coincidence of coming across them. But then also like I have like friends that send them to me as well, like they see them and it's like a nice like, oh, I thought of you when I saw this. But the idea that they're just using this one template across the whole city is kind of humorous to me. I don't know why, but it just seems kind of ridiculous. But yeah, so just capturing like the randomness, I guess.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because I remember I saw a couple is the wet paints stick on the ground instead of a wall. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes they are on the ground and you're like, what am I meant to be looking at? And then it's also like tempting fate kind of, it's like, should I touch it? Like, I don't know, don't know how long this sign's been here for. Could be here forever.
Yeah, can I add something? Because I love those sort of signs. I think there's something really fun about photographing them because you're divorcing them from the very specific purpose they have. And like these are very declarative. They're all these sort of informational signs that are meant to be telling you this is specific to something, this place, this time, this for a certain period. But by just photographing them and abstracting from that, they become these sort of weird little objects, and they're communicating that the message is completely lost now, or then takes on something completely different because you've just. It's not, it's fallen off, it's not where it's supposed to be, or it's, you've just gathered these from the places where the paint would now be dry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Leon, the concept of these urban areas and street scenery is one of the common elements that keep appearing from your works, and you both, you and Serena both have similar points on the this interaction and engagement is in a space, how people see a familiar space and react to it, and can you tell us what kind of idea, or is there any inspiration that typically draws your attention to this?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things. I think I was just writing some notes on the question you asked at the start because I was thinking some things I didn't say, but was just thinking about the fact that, like, as I was, a teenager and growing up, I was getting into photography, like a 15-year-old. I was, I grew up in Footscray in the West, and I spent a lot of time walking around Footscray, which is quite a multicultural area, and just documenting a lot of that, and that was sort of me understanding my place in there and my belonging within that place. It was also quite funny because I had some friends, not from the West, and they were scared of, dangerous Footscray, which seemed completely foreign to me because I felt so comfortable there, and I made myself so comfortable there by just navigating the space and getting to know it. So I've always sort of been thinking about being in spaces and where you live and how you relate to these spaces, but I think as time has gone on, it's also just thinking about how these places change and environments change, and also I've recently moved back to the West, and it's reflecting how these environments have been developed, and some are positive developments, other things it's gentrification, other things, all these ways that cities change without much like autonomy of people who live within them or communities who live within them. These things just new things get developed without really people having a say in how these things happen. And I think in terms of inspiration to that, like my partner is an urban planner, I studied urban planning, and I was along with them a lot when they were writing the whole master's thesis and all that, and I've been thinking, over the last few years, been thinking a lot about city planning and about how cities are built and assembled, and how all sorts of things about community consultation, all these sort of different things inform how a city is assembled and how that relates to communities within that, and sort of trying to reflect that and reflect kind of finding failures of that and failures of just like mess or just junk, all this other sort of stuff that is not the main point of a city but is just everywhere around us, and sort of trying to just understand that, or also finding a sort of aesthetic beauty in that, because that is just the environment we are within. So attempting to process that and find some beauty in that, because that's just, I'm always looking around and just observing, trying to find shapes things, patterns and interesting things in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that perfectly captured by your recent show in the intermission gallery, that video recording, and I think that just mundane thing around the Caulfield campus is just brings up memories, and yeah, just brings up memories instantly, and especially the audio part. I think the audio part is the spirit, because I stand in the space and just for a couple of moments, and then the train station announcement just comes up and instantly pick up my memories. And yeah, can you tell us about that work?
Yeah, I think thank you for what you said about it. I mean, the context of this work, like the show at intermission, was this tree work in progress. It was a 2-channel video, one of which was these very still static shots of just from around the Caulfield campus or on the rooftop of the old Caulfield Plaza car park, and of like the big screen when it was turned off in the green, and then the other shot was from this slow motion shot from when some arborists were trimming one of the big eucalypts in the middle of the Caulfield campus as well. And then I had field recordings which I'd recorded just with these little headphone microphones, which was another like a 50-minute loop of all these different field recordings for the last few weeks or month or two, all from around campus as well. And for me, a lot of that process is even just the process of recording that. It's quite fun and quite satisfying. There's something about not being satisfied with just simply observing or existing in the world, but often also wanting to document your own observance of the world and existence, and creating these really long, but doing these sort of long form, slow, durational kind of works that create an experience of sitting within them or replicate that experience of being within a place or a space for other people. So that I like what you said about how you can get evoked, all memories can get evoked just by the experience of being in there and being sort of taken back to being somewhere else, or having that feeling of being within this setting or something else. Yeah, and so it's a mix of that. I think it's quite fun to having quite slow, like quite boring, not necessarily the most thrilling content creates a really different experience for a viewer or a perceiver of that work, because rather than having to be directly engaged or directly trying to process what's going on, you kind of have to sit within it and your mind just wanders. And then it's a much more different experience of just wandering around and what people think about while you're just within this sort of ambient environment. And yeah, trying to sort of continually kind of keep building those moods or assemble those moods and see what sort of interesting feelings and senses you can evoke in people. And in a way that isn't, like I had a piece of writing with that which was quite a bit more sort of personal essay. It was pretty just diaristic. And that was a bit my perspective, but it wasn't the core part of the exhibition. It's a piece of text someone could pick up and read, but it wasn't like, this is what this is about. This is my perspective on this environment I presented, but having that space for someone else to engage with that and find other perspectives in it.
Yeah, I really like that. That's not like a formal artist statement for that paper, and I really like the perspective of you documenting all the process. Yeah. Next part, I want to bring Chicane in about this memory and belonging. I think memory plays another type of role in your practice, and as it's simply just trigger one's mind about what they have seen, what they have heard, or what they have experienced. But what do you think about these memories and photography contribute to this preservation or reinterpretation of cultural narratives or traditions?
I think in a few ways my practice definitely does relate to memory. Growing up, going to, I guess, like a religious school and being involved in my community, it's quite tight-knit because we all live close to each other to be able to go to like community events. So I have lots of memories regarding what I've learned growing up and different, I guess, cultural experiences growing up, and being really lucky to, I guess,
be part of a community here in Melbourne, even if it's quite far from home. I guess that ability, to make those connections with people, anywhere in the world, if they are Jewish, is kind of this sort of known unknown. If you go anywhere in the world, like, you've got to find like the local synagogue, and then you'll be able to like get hooked up with a community, and you'll know everyone, or they'll just invite you over. So I guess being able to recreate sort of different, situations, specifically I do more studio photography, so it's quite a controlled environment. A lot of these memories and ideas of growing up and today more specifically being, outside of, school, and being less, naturally able to just quickly reconnect with people in my community, because it's still quite distant. I've got to put more of that effort. But there are like these memories of family and community that always come up when I'm taking these photos, or specifically in the one portrait that's untitled, but there is this one portrait where I'm wearing a traditional dress from my grandmother, and it's more from like Moroccan heritage, and I guess being given that dress to then wear for this shoot felt really, I could just really connect with, my history, and to remind myself that even in this society, even in, like Melbourne, this fast-paced environment, like Western society, I can still take a step back and make space for, where I come from, which I love. And memory is really timeless. I think there is, time. I think time isn't so linear, and neither is memory. So I guess recreating these things based on something that isn't necessarily stuck in one time, I can take out what I love from it and re-embed it. Often I play music whilst I'm doing my shoots and things like that, so to really be able to feel like I'm doing it. So it's not exactly just putting on a dress or wearing something other. It's making myself that own space in a place where I'm comfortable.
Thank you. As you mentioned about your practice kind of stage and studio photography, and I want to bring Chantal here. As some of your practice is also kind of staged, like it's being constructed in a way, and I want to ask, have you ever tried other type of like media apart from photography to depict this concept of belonging for women, and like, do you find any difference between photography and other types of media?
I have tried other forms of media before. I've done some paintings. I just finished a glass class as well. I find photography, for me personally, the easiest to come across with symbolism, because it's I find photography really easy to manipulate, and I can work with lighting, costume, a lot of little elements, whereas when I did the glass class, a lot of my works didn't have meaning, because I'm not really too sure how to manipulate and move it to what I sort of want. I find photography and painting kind of similar. I find that photography and painting, I can manipulate both to convey the different meanings and messages I want. I'm just not a good painter, so.
Thank you. And Shekay, you also have other practice like painting and I believe printmaking as well. What's your opinion about this different type of media on your capturing or depicting this sense of belonging?
I used to have a huge history in just painting, and when I went to art school I was like, okay, I'm going to be this really great painter, but that is not where I am. I haven't touched a brush in quite a while, but I think I was told, last year by one of my tutors, that
my work isn't necessarily going to always be painting. When I was still kind of stuck in painting, not really sure what to do, they're like, your work isn't always going to be painting, but it's that painterly lens that I think might be more also relatable for you guys. Because you can draw a picture and you can paint a picture, but it's sort of this reconfiguration of objects and I guess ideas, and in like a specific space that I feel in photography I'm able to do that, like the same process but with a different material. And yeah, I do have quite a background in printmaking. I love the process, and I like working with text. So that is something that I do struggle to, I guess, navigate with photography. I do have some video works, and I do enjoy video work as well, and I have put text in video work as well. There is one that I've done on like blood libels, and it's a satirical video work where I do incorporate text, but I do in printmaking use text sort of as an illustration. But I think the reason why I stuck with printmaking as well, rather than, I guess, drawing or painting as an art practice, is because I see the text more as like an image, and it's got like strong like roots, and like in Hebrew, every single letter has like spiritual meaning, and like it's really, really interesting. So I really do love that. But yeah, I'm still trying to see how it is translated into photography, if at all. But I don't necessarily think that it needs to, because I think they can have their own sort of processes, and I can just approach them differently.
Thank you. And Leon, I want to ask another, a bit go back to a staged and a mundane, this difference. Like, what's your perspective on this different strength of deliver this sense of belonging, this illusion of memory, and from a constructed image and just a mundane scenery and accidental image?
I mean, I feel like they're quite blurred lines between those things as well. I mean, I guess coming back to what a few of us are saying about the sort of ease or accessibility of photography and the immediacy of the image is really appealing. I'm impatient, and it's also why I've done a bit, and so that idea of being able to immediately capture a scene and have it recreated within, you know, a piece of film or some megabytes is quite nice. And I think there's different realms to it, because I think I like to rearrange things. You're always sort of manipulating a scenery, even if you're just necessarily capturing things, you're manipulating it just by sort of how you decide to compose an image or how you move around. And I will just have these silly little rules about composition or something else. You're always constantly shuffling a tiny bit, so that little tree's just there or something else, that little line is going just the way it's supposed to go. And we'll move objects around a bit in the frame, but it's not quite the same as doing a proper sort of staged sort of studio kind of imagery, which I think I have a lot of admiration for, but I like a really sort of experimental approach, and I often don't find I have the time in that sort of studio thing to really get there. I do appreciate the use of, though, and I think something I would like to get into more is like how you can use lighting and stuff to really manipulate or accentuate or play with the scene is quite fun. I think that's the appeal as well if you're doing a sort of studio practice. And I also like studied film, and I was a cinematographer sort of through up, and that was a bit more fun because that was like you had a whole crew behind you, you had an idea in mind, but then you were really able to work with like lighting and other things to really sort of like really make the most out of a sequence. But yeah, I think in terms of, for me, in the mundanity, I think it is like that immediacy, that sort of diary kind of like approach. I think it's just that, yeah, it's for me, there's two aspects in terms of there's both the presentation of the images and the curation of them, which I can struggle a bit with more, but the first step is just the sort of the documentation, the observation, and just collecting masses and masses of images and going back to an exhibition, and like those sound recordings, just having like hours of just audio that I've recorded for some reason, and like gigabytes. I've got hundreds of gigabytes of just photos from years of photos on my hard drives. Why? Because that's just what you do. You just keep taking photos. So that's such a core part of like how I sort of exist in the world. So and that's just continuing on that process, to continue to keep observing the world, understanding the world, and as your perspective and as your interests change and as your fascinations change, what you document, what you choose also changes. But it's quite reactive. It's really responsive and quite immediate in a fun way. And then you've got to deal with what you do with them all.
Yeah, the whole process of doing photography is really fascinating, because I myself also have a bit of it with a practice, and having this large storage is essential, and the whole process is also just interesting. And I want to ask Chantal, have you ever encounter any like difficulties? Because this whole process of doing photography, when you try doing the composition or other elements, and it is sometimes just annoying, and just, you just have to get right. I want to ask, have you ever encountered any like significant obstacles of depicting this like added identity for women?
I definitely have. I find that like the issues I tackle in my photography, they're very broad. So it's every femme person's experience is different, and no experience is the same. So it's like a lot of my work is based off my personal like feelings and everything like that. So it can be hard to articulate exactly what I want to say. I also find that since the topics I cover are so like weighty, they can be hard to talk about or even make, just because they're quite like it focuses on very serious issues, so it can make people uncomfortable because they're uncomfortable topics. They need to be spoken about, but it can be like upsetting or awkward, or like I've had times where I've discussed my art with someone and they've started crying, so then I've started crying, and then we've both been crying together over the artwork, because they relate to it in a way, and then they tell me their story and then I relate to their story. It does create like a really nice energy where we're both supporting one another, but it can be really difficult to like listen to. I do find that it's easy for a lot of femme presenting people to talk about their experiences when I debut my work, because there's a statistic that's like 97% of women have experienced sexual harassment. So there is a large chunk of women and femme presenting people who have seen or been through, or have a friend who's been through something that I'm talking about in the artwork. So that makes it a little easier. I like the idea that my artwork can help find someone's voice to speak out about something, or even just like, again, like tell me like, oh, I had something like this happen as well. That way they're not keeping it all to themselves. They've at least got someone that they're like, I feel less alone now because I can relate to this.
Yeah. So as we getting close, next part I want to talk about a bit more about the personal side, and Serena. I want to ask Liz, is finding recurring patterns and subjects in your practice, this utilize of repetition do you think that through this documentation and where you travel, where you live, pointed out any kind of direction of placing yourself in this photography field or in art world in general?
I guess repetition, like, yeah, I think it plays more into that idea, I guess, of like the mundane, I suppose, like the repetition of seeing things every day, but I don't know, I feel like a lot of the, when I think about when I'm doing stuff, to me I'm trying to find the humour in things a little bit, and setting the challenge of, or not the challenge, but it's interesting to look back on or reflect on the things you've collected, and it's like, how many did I truly see, I suppose. But yeah, I guess it does always bring you back to place and time, and especially travelling like in foreign landscapes, especially things that are like far, like unfamiliar to me. Yeah, I also, that method of collection, and not manipulating the images or just letting them exist how they are, is important to me, I suppose, just to allow them to like exist in the world, and it doesn't need to change, I guess. But yeah, the possibilities of it are kind of endless, I suppose. Like, there's always going to be these things that repeat throughout my life, and that kind of plays into coincidence and chance, and yeah, and there's like not really time limits as well. I mean, for some there are, but for some there aren't, which is nice. You can, it's a continuous thing, and it kind of ends when I decide for it to end. I don't think that really answered the question, but but you know.
Leon, as you have more experience on photography, how do you think this current situation, this digital format, influence the way people connect with their cultural identities and engage in this preservation of cultural aspects and expressing their ideas, and how do you see yourselves as being these mundane sceneries and in this art world?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the sort of digital or current situation, I think it's interesting. Serena mentioned Instagram and sort of social media. I have always been a photographer on the internet in some way. Like, my first social media platform was Flickr, which was the great little photography website. Which was it was a phenomenal way to connect with other like photographers both here in Melbourne and like team photographer group from all these different people from around the world. But it was just this way of sharing your images and developing as an artist through that, and from then it was like using places like Tumblr as well to share your images, and then of course Instagram. And I think the interesting thing about Instagram is that it was such an important impact on photography when it sort of came about. You know, suddenly everyone was shooting square format, and it was this, for a long while, a really core part of, like, a lot of photographers were on that platform. It was a great way that suddenly made everyone a photographer, or everyone was very much how you used images became such a core thing. But I also find it interesting how, as a platform, it's moving away from that. They don't care about photos anymore. They want videos, they want reels, they want other stuff. It's just ads. I hate it now. I hate Instagram. But it's still somehow like core to us as artists, to somehow we're meant to exist on this platform that has, for a while, was so useful for artistic expression. But it's because of the fact that it's just controlled by this corporation who just want to make money off you, and they've got a particular idea like that they want, that of what content suits, what things suit the algorithm, is that there's all these things working against actual artists being able to exist on these platforms and share stuff and share just their own practices. And I think we could do better to sort of find ways to move away from those sort of platforms to try and have other, like, less, capitalist exploitative platforms to still share our artworks and share our images and how we can exist. Yeah. because I think it's good to preserve things. It's good to document how you are in the world. And I think I think in terms of this repetition, I love taking photos of like I take so many photos of the same thing, and I love posting photo sets where it's just like 10 photos for basically the exact same photo, but it's every photo in my roll of that little image. And it's a bit of a it's quite funny to think about. If you think about film photography, that's such an expensive process because it's just each of those frames is a whole process. And if you think, there's the whole idea of mechanical reproduction was this idea of being able to recreate images is such a new thing just in the 20th century. Beforehand didn't exist at all. And now we're at this stage where, yes, storage is still expensive, but it's not that expensive. You can have thousands of images where there's an immensity of content. And that's kind of fun because you can just do whatever you want with it. There's so many variations and different distortions of images, and how you can sort of play with those ideas or play with that and just capture lots of stuff is, I think, quite fun. And yeah, but as I said, I think we should find ways to still kind of preserve and express ourselves and have documentations of our practices that aren't at the whims of corporations that could take them all down one day.
Thank you. And before we finish, I want to ask Chantal or Chike, do you have any final thoughts about what we discussed today?
I do agree with Leon. They've put it really well with the like Instagram and the you explained it really well with the it's a big photography now is very mass produced. It's I don't know if this is just my experience, but it's seen as really easy, and there's a little part of me now that's oh, it's not real artwork. And I find that every photographer I talk to where I talk about that, they also are yeah, it doesn't feel real, because it's so easily mass produced. And I think also now that we've got our phones that have cameras, it doesn't feel as hefty anymore. And I think there's a sense of belonging in the photography community with that, because everyone can relate to feeling it's not real work, it's fine, but it is real work, we've done amazing.
Yeah, I mean, sure, on that, it's so much until it actually, the artwork, the photo that you do choose to be the actual artwork, at least in my case, it takes so long to get there sometimes, and I think it gives you a new appreciation of photography. When I started photography, I just did it because, and I just tried it out a bit more. I had taken lots of photos, way back on Instagram when I was younger, whatever even. And I thought I'm such a photographer back then. But I never really thought of myself as a photographer or ever would be one because of this kind of mass production of imagery. And I thought, well, what can I make that'll actually be different? Or what can I make that'll actually speak to anyone if everything is just so quick? But I think the whole process of trying to take one, at least in my case, how I do it is and I'm sure you all do the same thing but translate it differently. You do one thing or take one photo and try, set it up in one specific way. For the shoot that I'm doing with The Last Supper today, before I got here, was my 4th shoot for the same thing. It's a huge shoot, we've got to be 13 people, and for that to take 4 times to do it, each time it's at least 4 hours, 5 hours each shoot. There's a lot of effort that goes into it, but once you've got the one thing, as long as I feel that artists just feel comfortable themselves and say, hey, that's good, this is a good image, and there might be a lot of imagery around, but this is a good one, and this one isn't gonna just go into the trash, and this isn't just gonna be taken and just ignored. Yeah, so as long as we have a conscious approach to image making in one way or another, photography still lives.
Thank you. Before we finish, does anyone have question for the artists? No? Okay. And once again, I thank you all for the participation and sharing your ideas and thoughts about your practice, about photography. And I thank you all for your patience, for listening to this panel. And thank you.